Yeah.
It's hard thinking.
And that was my next question for you guys. Now, listen, with all due respect to Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, they're goats already.
But,
they already are cemented in our whole bloodline of the Eagles community. But is Landon Dickerson the best offensive lineman we got? Like, for real, think about it. The dude is number one, and
what about Jordan Mailata?
No, listen,
he get beat a lot.
But listen, he's number one at any guard at run block percentage win rate, and he's number two of any guard and pass blocking percentage win rate. Like, he done stepped in and went from like a nobody to a Pro Bowler, All Pro in 2 years. Like, is he the best? You know, and he's the youngest too. You got to put that in there. So we got a lot of years to see if Landon is he the best offensive lineman on our roster right now.
And you said we taking the two goats out, right?
You're saying despite Kelsey and Lane?
I just want you guys to like take it.
That's what we're asking. We taking Lane and we taking Lane and Kelsey.
Lane Johnson. If you want to still say Lane and Kelsey, I'm saying who's the best offensive lineman in terms of like Lane gave up 3 sacks in 2 years, you know, and pressures in like 3 years or some crazy number like that. We already know what they can do, right? But I'm just saying, like right now on the offensive line, right now going into 23, do you think they're still the best on our offensive line, or do you think that Landon
based off of where we stopped, like, you know, they are older, and one off season is like them aging 5 years versus like a 25-year-old going into a new season. But just based off of where we stopped, Lane Johnson is number one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you can bump Kelsey down a little bit because he did have all them bad timings, bad snaps when he was playing with Minshew and all that.
Both of those guys missed games too. Lane missed games, and also Kelsey missed games. Landon hasn't missed any games.
Okay, because he's a spring chicken. Like, you owe, like, if I'm not taking injuries into account, if I'm saying when they're on the field, who's better right now, Lane is the ultimate number one.
But anybody that's gave up 3 pressures in 3 years,
it's Lane and Kelsey.
And then the way he be thugging out and playing through his injuries too. Like, we can't ignore that.
Symone, you seen the interview he just had when he was talking about how he had to like change his whole game in a matter of a couple of weeks of his timing and everything to make sure he didn't get beat because he knew people was gonna bull rush him. He said he took every snap and he timed it out. So if people was bull rushing, he would be in a spot to cut him off so he wouldn't put pressure on his leg. And he said that was the hardest thing about playing through the injury because he had to reposition himself because he usually can get contact right off the line, but with the injury, he was trying to catch the contact later. He was like, if you look at my snaps in the playoffs, I was catching people almost 2 seconds later than I usually would.
That's crazy.
So that right there put him one. Like, if you can change your game in 2-3 weeks, you can go from being a guy who's physical to a guy who's mentally beating you. I gotta give it to Lane. But if we take it Lane and Kelsey out, Landon has to be because Mailata give up way too much pressure.
So BG, you're saying that you think Landon Dickerson is the best right now?
I'm just saying, like, you just think about the progression of all those guys. Like, it's kind of like the Jalen Hurts saying, like, he's only started 2 years, right? It's like Landon's only started 2 years, you know. And if you look at how long it took the NFL to give respect to Lane Johnson and for him to be a dominant right tackle in the NFL, right? And how long did it take for Jason Kelsey to get respect and, you know, to become this dominant center that he is? You know, a couple of years, like maybe even like Kelsey a little longer than Lane, I would say probably, but Landon came in and he's been a dog since day one. You know,
if you can try to get that clip off of that Richard Sherman Lane Johnson interview.
Yeah, like Landon definitely is on a great trajectory. Like, his trajectory is phenomenal. But if we talking about just the way we ended last season, like, that doesn't mean Landon didn't have a great season. But I feel like
who's our All Pros last year? Who's our All Pros last year?
I think Lane Johnson was the most impactful lineman last season.
You said
Yeah,
all
Landon
pro. I
might
think
be this year,
everybody was,
I mean,
but
like
one
you
was
said, like
actually
Landon
all pro.
is
Right?
taking huge leaps quickly. So this year, I mean, we might see, but right now, Lane got that belt.
Cause we had 2 starters and 2 alternates. Who was the one that got left out?
On the All Pro, I believe
we had
I know Kelsey was All Pro, right?
Yes. Lane Johnson was all pro.
We had 6, right? So it was Kelsey,
And Dickerson and Mulatto was the alternates, right?
the alternate All Pro,
Yep.
or second team All Pro, right?
Oh, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 out of the 5.
It's good. Like, we got a great line, so I'm not giving any taking shots at Kelsey or Lane. I'm just like, right now, like, I guess it's easier looking forward and be like, Landon Dickerson's made a huge jump. He gets a lot more recognized earlier in his career than those guys did, and he's already, like, they're saying, like, he's the best guard in football right now after 2 years of starting at the position. So that's pretty impressive. Just like Jalen Hurts being the best quarterback after 2 years starting, like, Landon also is like the best guard after 2 years starting.
I think Landon Dickerson trajectory is going to be higher than both of those boys, though.
Yeah,
But you got to think Jason Kelsey didn't come in year 2 and be like this, or Lane Johnson. They really just coming into their legs like the last maybe 5 or 6 years. Really started.
that's why I wasn't trying to connect the whole season as opposed to, like, I was trying to make it like where it can be like even a little bit, because obviously Lane Johnson's a GOAT. I like Lane too. I didn't put him on my starting offensive line, but I like Lane a lot. Like, I think he is the best right tackle ever played Eagles jersey for sure.
So why you ain't put him in your top 5?
Because I'm old school. I gotta go with my old dogs I remember watching. That's what got me to become an Eagle. Trey Thomas, JPP, like Ryan, like those guys are just nasty mauling. But they gave up more than Lane. Like, they didn't, like, those guys might have gave up some sacks, but they're still dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're big physical dogs. Lane is just like, he's good too, and he ain't gave up no sacks. So I guess it took Lane. Just like even Kelsey said in his podcast, it took a while for the league to really respect Lane Johnson. You know what I'm saying? That's how good he really is. Even today, you find an argument where he's the best right tackle in football, right? But I think right now, today, Lane Johnson is the best tackle in football. It don't matter left or right. He's the best tackle in football right now. They got him behind Trey Williams, right? Trent Williams, right?
Yeah.
And I think Lane's better than Trent.
I do too.
For real. Like, I don't even think that should be even a question mark. Lane should be #1 tackle in football right now. But at the end of the day, like, I watch a lot more of, like, dominance from those guys like Trey Thomas and Ryan and JPP. JPP was a beast, dude. Like, when JPP before he started getting hurt, he was the best tackle in football.